How much of your time in Cubase do you actually spend composing versus fighting the software, searching for setting, fixing a latency spike, scrolling through 200 tracks to find the right instrument? If you are honest with yourself, it's probably more than you like to admit. In this video, I'm going to show you the Cubase features that eliminate exactly that friction. The ones that once set up disappear completely into the background and let you focus entirely on the music. So without further ado, let's get into it. If you are working with large orchestral templates, dozens of contact instances, Spitfire plugins, etc., you know the struggle. CPU spikes, audio dropouts, and that frustrating latency when you try to play a part live into the DAW. Cubase has two very powerful tools that works together to solve this problem, so let's talk about them. ASIO Guard is Steinberg's performance optimization engine. The core idea is very elegant. Not every track in your project needs to be processed in real time. Tracks that are just playing back, strings you already recorded, brass hits already committed to MIDI, don't need that real-time responsiveness. So this guard routes those tracks through a second, larger processing buffer that runs slightly ahead of a playback. This gives the CPU more time to handle complex plugins chains, and it dramatically reduces the risk of dropouts in large projects. So the key feature is available here. You go to the studio setup, audio system, and you see those three options: low, normal, high. And low, this is a minimal pre-processing, very close to real time. Use this when you are actively recording on many tracks simultaneously. Normal, this is a balanced default, good starting point for most sessions. However, high, this is the maximum stability, and I use this often. The CPU pre-processes as much as possible. This is highly recommended for heavy orchestral templates. You may notice a very slight delay in response when moving faders during playback, but one important thing to understand: the moment you record enable a track, so you hit your track of your choice, let's say this ensemble patch, Cubase automatically moves it out of the ASIO Guard path and into the real-time path, this another path. So your live playing is always low latency, even with Guard set to high. But even with Guard doing its job, you might still notice latency when recording live, especially if you have heavy plugins like convolution reverbs, certain limiters, or complex channel strips inserted across your signal chain. This happens because Cubase automatically compensates for the processing delay each plugin introduces. This is called delay compensation, and it's a good thing during mixdown. However, when you are recording live, it makes everything feel sluggish. Constraint delay compensation, so let's say CDC, solve this by temporarily disabling the most latency heavy plugins on your record enabled and instrument tracks. Your signal path becomes cleaner, latency drops, and you can play in time with your VST. You can activate it from the project window right here, or you can go to your mix console. You can find this functions menu and you can click constraint delay compensation. However, which is most convenient way to trigger this function, in my humble opinion, you can assign it to your keyboard shortcut. For me, this is this key, because as a default in the Cubase, this is not assigned to any other functions. The workflow is simple. When you're about to record something live, hit CDC on, play your part, then hit CDC off when you are done. The heavy plugins come right back for mixdown. Now let me run through the default Cubase shortcuts that I generally use every single day when working on orchestral cues. These are basic, but believe me, powerful. Here's one that most Cubase users don't know or forget about it from my perspective. So let's look on the screen. When we want to rename, let's say, this viola part, we want to name it as a viola simply. Click enter, and we'll see that the MIDI regions didn't change the name. So when we type again viola and click shift enter, then all MIDI regions changed the name accordingly. So this shift enter while a track is selected opens the track name field, and when you type and confirm, it renames not just the track itself but all the MIDI parts on that track simultaneously. When you're building a large template and want to rename your violin one long track cleanly across all already recorded regions, this saves a surprising amount of time. Next, zooming. Let's say you want to record something on your keyboard and you want to rely only on your MIDI keyboard and regular keyboard. So to zoom in and out, you can use G and H. G to zoom out and H to zoom in horizontally. Simple, fast, and muscle memory after a week of use. If you are used to scroll wheel zooming in other DAWs, these take a bit of adjustment, but they are faster in practice really. Snap to grid J. J key toggles snap on and off. If you look on the screen here, when I hit J, now it's on. When I hit again, now it's off. For orchestral work where you are often nudging notes and expressions slightly off the grid for phrasing, being able to quickly toggle snap is really essential. So quick flick of J, move your event, J again to re-enable it. And as you can see in this very composition, I have many places when my MIDI regions are off the grid. Let's say this one. And let's assume that we want to move this event to the left. So if we have the J on, the event is snapping to the grid. However, if we press the J again, we can freely move the MIDI region without worrying about this snapping to the grid. Playback position, numpad plus and minus. These keys jump the playback position between markers and also plus to the right and minus to the left. We can hit plus, we go to right, minus to the left. And this is very important because when you want to compose faster, you want to have less elements to control, so you don't worry about the mouse to find the right position, hit here or hit there. You can simply move the playback position plus and minus. And my philosophy for controlling all of these tools, features, etc. is less is more. So I want and I like to focus entirely on my MIDI keyboard if I compose something, and if I want also to mix a little bit and move some elements during I'm composing, I want to have only the regular keyboard for my services without worrying about mouse. So now I want to show you my custom changes to key commands. Firstly, open key editor. By default, opening the key editor requires double clicking a MIDI part. So let's say we want to open the MIDI of this tremolo of first violin. Click here, we want to resize it, and now we can see the key editor. I strongly recommend binding the backtick key, the one which is not used in the Cubase by default. This is here, to open the key editor for selected track. One key press you are in, one key press you are out, no mouse in it. So if you want to assign it, you go here, edit, key commands, you can type key editor and find this option, open key editor of all MIDI parts on selected tracks. Click here, click your desired key to trigger this function, click assign, and now when I have the selected track, let's say this one, I click this backtick and I have the key editor open. If I want to go out, by default for Cubase is enter. Retrospective recording R. This one deserves its own section, but briefly. A retrospective recording captures everything you play on a recorded enabled track, even if you weren't actually recording, so this is very important. Cubase keeps a buffer in the background. When inspiration strikes and you improvise something great, pressing R in my case saves it. You can assign it to R or any comfortable key. For me, R was close enough because R is self-explanatory if I want to simply click fast to record my great idea. So let's simulate something. We can solo this second violin track and we can record something. Let's assume I forget to click record. I can click here R and I have this already done. Now return to start on stop. This preference, when enabled, makes Cubase jump back to the beginning of the project or to the last playback start position every time you stop. For iterative recording and auditioning, it means you stop, immediately rewind, and are ready to go again without pressing home or manually taking your mouse and playing with the playback position. By default in Cubase, if we hit space to playback, as you can see, the playback stopped at the very moment of hitting the space. So to make it come back to the initial point, you go to Transport, Start Mode, and hit Return to Start Position on Stop. After that, when we hit space and we kick space again, the playback comes to the initial position. You can toggle this on or off via these settings which I showed you, or via a key command, so you can turn it on when recording and off when you want free scrubbing behavior. The key editor is where orchestral composers spend most of their time in Cubase. It's the piano roll, the CC editor, the expression sculptor. So let's go through 4 workflows that will significantly upgrade how you use it. When you open the key editor on a freshly recorded MIDI part, by default you see either nothing in the control lane or a generic set of lanes. But here's the thing, different VST libraries use different combination of CCs. CC1, mod wheel, CC11 expression, CC64 for sustain, and so on and so forth. So in the key editor, when you go here, click plus, click show used controllers, Cubase will automatically display only the CC lines that actually have data in the current part. No more hunting. Once you've got the right layout for your workflow, say CC1, CC11, CC2 maybe, always visible by default, you can save this as a preset in the same menu. So you click this, add preset, you can name it as orchestral, and now every time you open the key editor, your preferred CC lines are already there. Here is something that catches many orchestral composers off guard. When you record CC data live, mod wheel expression, ref controller, you get a beautiful dense stream of hundreds of tiny data points, don't you? That granularity is exactly what you want. It's what makes the expression feel human and continuous. The problem is that Cubase has a setting called automation reduction, which is active by default. Its job is to simplify CC curves by removing what it considers redundant data points, turning 500 points into 40. The curve looks the same visually, but you've lost the precision. When you try to edit a specific moment in that expression swell of your horns, let's say, there may simply be no data point there to grab and adjust. For orchestral work, where you care deeply about every subtle shift in dynamics, this is a real issue. The fix is twofold. First, go into the project, find Automation panel, settings, and reduce, so level down return time and reduction level, or disabled it entirely, so that Cubase preserves every data point you recorded. Second, if you go to the key editor, in the CC lane toolbar, check the drop-down menu again, find type of new controller events, and change ramp, which is default setting, usually to step. And why is that? If it's set to ramp, Cubase interpolates between points, which sounds smooth but actually hides details. You draw a point and Cubase silently fills in the gap. Set it to step, and every data point you record is treated as an explicit, discrete value. Nothing is interpolated away. What you recorded is exactly what you see and exactly what you can edit. One pro tip: once you've recorded your CC data with full granularity, you can always thin it out later if needed. But however, you can't get that detail back if Cubase discarded it on the way in. Record everything first, edit selectively second. Here is one of my favorite topics when it comes to orchestral realism. If you ever fully quantized a MIDI performance and been shocked how robotic and mechanic it sounds, this is exactly why. Real orchestral musicians don't play perfectly on the grid. We talked about it in the previous videos. A section of strings will have slight timing variations between players. A solo oboe will breathe into notes slightly early or late. These micro imperfections are what give the music life. When you hard quantize to 100%, you strip all of that out. Cubase iterative quantize, sometimes called soft quantization, solve this beautifully. So you can open the quantize panel here in the key editor and find the soft quantize option. At 100%, it's a full hard quantize. Everything snaps to the grid perfectly, but set it to, say, 60% and Cubase moves each note only 60% of the way towards the nearest grid position. This means, for example, a note that was 20 milliseconds late ends up 8 milliseconds late. Close enough to feel tight and intentional, but not so precise that it sounds programmed. The natural imperfections survive. For orchestral work, I find 50 to 65% to be the sweet spot. Try it on your strings versus hard quantization and listen to the difference. It's immediately audible. In orchestral work, you almost never edit just one instrument in isolation. You want to see how the cello line relates to the bass trombone, or check that the violin melody sits correctly against the, let's say, viola accompaniment. Cubase lets you open multiple MIDI parts simultaneously in the key editor. So let's select, let's say, viola and this flute, open the key editor with the previous shortcut, and now we can see two MIDI lines. Each track notes, this is obvious for most of us, appear in a different color, which you can customize by track color, giving you an instant visual score. You can choose which track is the active one for editing by clicking its name here. So now we have viola, we can click flute, or by simply clicking the note related to that track. When we click here, you can see that we have the flute. When we click the notes from the viola, this changes to the viola. Only the active tracks notes are editable. The others are displayed as a reference. So this is incredibly powerful for voice leading and harmonic editing. Track visibility agents are pre-programmed rules that automatically show or hide tracks based on conditions. You access them through the visibility tab in the left zone of the project window here. So when we open here, we can see the predefined presets. So let's say show tracks with data at the cursor position. This is self-explanatory, but let's investigate it. So we set up our playback here, we go here, click this option, and now we can see only the data and only the tracks which has the data at this very moment of the playback. Another thing, so let's come back to show all tracks. When we want to see only the tracks which have the data, this is very important for huge templates. When we have plenty of unused instruments, we simply click show tracks with data, and now we see only the tracks, VST tracks, which has the MIDI regions or audio regions already assigned. You can also combine agents with track presets to create named visibility configurations, so strings only, brass and woodwinds, rhythm section, etc., and switch between them instantly. And this is how professional orchestral composers navigate massive templates without losing their minds. So let's simulate that situation. Let's say we want to have the preset for the strings only. So we go to the visibility, we untag every unwanted track, and now we see only the strings. Now we go to the configurations, add configuration, and we will name it as strings and click enter. Now let's come back to show all tracks, and if we want to see only strings, we go here, and now we can see again only the strings instruments. And crucial thing, visibility is non-destructive for audio, so hiding a track doesn't affect its playback or automation. It's purely a visual filter which should help you focus. Divide track list is a simple but brilliant feature. It splits your project window track list into two independently scrollable sections. The classic use case. Put your tempo track, marker track, chord track in the upper section. They stay fixed and always visible no matter how far you scroll down your VST. The lower section contains all your instrument tracks, and you can scroll freely through 200 string players without losing sight of your timeline markers. For film scoring specifically, this is invaluable. Your picture lock markers stay visible at all times while you scroll through the orchestral layers below. To activate it, you can find this option here in the right upper corner, divide track list, and now you have two sections. So let's simulate this scoring. For example, let's add the signature track, tempo track, and now when we scroll here, this section above remains still all the time. This visibility splitting is also available in the mix console, so let's go to the mix console, and as you can see, I have the 3 columns in my mix console. And if you want to split your mix channels into these 3 regions, you can go to this visibility dots, and for each of the channel you can assign whether you want to have it on the left, in the center, and on the right. And this is very convenient, especially if you want to, as I want, usually have my instrument tracks in the center, reverbs and some of the pre-mixed channels, so my stems on the left, and my stereo, so the master channel on the right. Then you can easily navigate through all of these channels. Alright, so that's the 4 areas I wanted to cover today. ASIO guard and CDC for smooth recording, the keyboard shortcuts that matters, the key editor workflows for serious orchestral editing, and track visibility for managing big templates. If you found this useful, subscribe, hit the like. I will be posting more Cubase and orchestral production content. And let me know in the comments which of these you are going to try first or you have already used in your workflow. Also, if there is a specific Cubase feature you want me to dig into next, just let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one, and as always, happy composing!